Meeting to order for the Senate Appropriations Public Safety Subcommittee. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to ask my dear friend, Senator Randy Robertson, to give us a word of prayer.
If you bow your heads with me, please. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you today, Lord, for the blessings that you give us each and every day and for the compassion, Lord God, that not only do you give us, but that you require that we hand out to our fellow man in equal doses each and every day. God, I ask that you wrap your arms around my brothers and sisters, Lord God, those in the fire services, those law enforcement officers, the EMTs, the paramedics, and the dispatchers out there, Lord God. My brothers and sisters that walk up and down the hallways of the prisons and jails in our state, Lord. Put the compassion in them, Lord God, and let the light of your love and the love of your Son and our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ shine through each one of them. I ask these blessings in your precious name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. All right. We're getting some more folks walking in here. But we're going to begin. I'm going to go down the list. If you've not seen it, we're going to start out with Department of Corrections. We're going to go to the GBI. They'll be on deck, and then we're going to follow by CJCC. Then we're going to go to DJJ. Then we're going to go to Public Safety. Then Post, Firefighter Standards and Training, and last but certainly not least, JIPSTEC. So with that in mind, Commissioner, I'll turn it over to you. Let me begin by thanking you, your team, and all the great work you do to handle all the folks that are within the prison system, but all the other work that I know you do for everyone in the state. So please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Committee. I think we've already given you guys some handouts with our presentation on it. So if you would turn to the first slide, and that's going to be the administration program. That's going to be tracking number 108.1, and that's going to show an increase of $897 to reflect an adjustment for employer share of the teacher retirement system. And then on item 108.2, that's the authorization utilizing the 10% increase for the correction officers. And we have correction officers in 6 other programs, so you're going to hear the same verbiage as I go through the presentation, okay? But that's the 10% that the governor allowed us to give our well-deserving young men and women, like Representative Robbie Robertson said about walking that hall each and every day. Next is the detention centers program. Probation detention centers, that's item 109.1, and we're going to transfer a total of $3,016,262 from the state prison program to cover costs associated with a rate increase for our residential substance abuse contract. And then item 109.2, this item is language concerning the opening of a new 50-bed dorm at Bacon PDC. This language is to move offenders and staff from other locations to support operating expenses of this dorm. And the estimated completion date is that's going to be October of 2021. We'll be up and running. And also item 109.3, again, that's to take care of those COs in that program. Next page, sir, is the food and farm program, and very quickly, it's we have corrections officers in that program. So item 110.1 is to cover those COs in that program. Okay. Next slide is our health services program, item 111.1, and that's an increase of $1,193. That's to reflect an adjustment in the employer share of teacher retirement system. We just have 2 employees in that program that fits in that category. Next slide, please. Next is our offender management program. Again, 111.12.1 is also to cover the COs that are in that program. Okay. Next slide is that's the private prison program, and that's item 113.1. This provides authorization for the vendor to utilize current contract funding to support a 10% increase for their correction officers, so with existing contract money.
And Commissioner Ward, if I could for a moment, this will then have parity because we obviously are increasing our internal folks by 10% private, so we can stay even across the board.
Yes.
That's great. And I don't want to interrupt your flow necessarily, but I know we talked about this a little bit during the amended budget cycle. This is obviously going to be big help, and I think more than deserved for your folks as well as those in our private system. Have we done a study in recent times of where we map up against other states, specifically in the Southeast?
Yes, we've got your handout for that to show you a comparison. It's not a study, but it's a comparison of beginning salaries. Now, each state has a little bit of some nuances because like after a certain period or required training, they may get a little small bump up. And so, but that'll give you a footprint of where other states are compared to us around the southeast. We
Perfect.
try to use the comparable southern states to make sure we look at that, because once you get above, I guess it makes the distance line a little bit, you get those union states and they have much higher salaries.
Certainly.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Please
Okay.
continue.
Next slide is the state prisons program, item 114.1, and that's again an increase to reflect the adjustment for the teacher retirement adjustment there. Item 114.2, and that is to transfer that $3,016,262 in timekeeping solution savings to the detention centers program for a contract rate increase for the residential substance abuse contract. So that's that money right there. And item 14.3, this item language is concerning the opening of 4 new dorms at Metro Reentry Facility. These will house over 400 additional TC beds. Then this language is to move offenders and staff from locations to support the operating expense of these dorms. And we should have that 4 dormitories up in operation by July 21st of this year. So that's going to be a big shot in the arm, allowing individuals in the Metro Atlanta area to transition from prison back to the street with a little money in their pocket. So we got 400 additional beds for Metro Atlanta. And also item 14.4, again, that's the 10% increase. And try to give you a little, and you see the sheet about the salaries. That's going to be, like you say, a good down payment and a shot in the arm for our well-deserving correction officers. So you can see the salaries on that slide, how much they're going to make now.
And I'll interrupt you for a moment if I could again, Commissioner. This is very telling information between, some of the locals in Cobb, Forsyth, and Fulton versus where you are citing Phillips State as an example.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, one of my questions would be, I know we've had a very high turnover rate in your ranks. About, I guess it was 3-4 years ago, maybe a little longer, we gave the large pay increase to law enforcement in the
Yes.
state, and we saw a really good result of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to have maybe a check-in even before we get back here next January with you to see, once this takes effect, what your turnover rate's doing, as well as maybe do some further study as to where we need to be before we get to the next amended or full budget.
Yeah, I'm projecting within the next 90 days, I should see a bump. Because from the hiring process, to get them to BCOT, we should in that next 90 days. So that's I'm focused on that next 90 days to make sure if this pay raise, this new shot in the arm is going to give us that bump up we need.
And just for everybody's edification, what is your current turnover rate?
Right now, we're sitting, I got the number right here. We're right at almost 41%. It's 42.8% turnover rate.
And one other question, I don't know if you have this handy or not, we can do this follow-up by email if you do not, but do you know what the cost is all in for you to train someone, have them fully functional?
And we're working on that for Representative Williams asked the same question, and we're working with our training section to try to get that number. We'll make sure we get that number back to you.
Okay, great,
And
thank
the
you.
turn rate is pretty high on that one.
Yeah, that's what we believe, so, okay, continue on, please.
Okay. Next is the Transition Center Program. That's the next slide. That's item 115.1. This language is also concerning the opening of a new 100-bed dorm at Smith TC down in Claxton, Georgia. Also, this language is to move the offenders and staff from other locations to support the operating expense. And we're projecting that those beds will come online August the 21st. So we get a lot of good things as far as TC beds and opportunities for guys in the system. So thanks to that. And then item 115.2 again is just the authorization to take care of all the COs in that program. And the next slide is just a printout of all the bonds we got. I want to give a thanks to you all for you gave us a very robust plan last year, and you're doing us another robust plan this year. $15 million is going for emergency repairs. Another $15.6 million is going for security system upgrades, and $14.9 million for major repairs, for a total bond of a little bit over $45.5 million. So that's a good shot in the arm as far as making sure we take care of the aging infrastructure. And those are all of my slides, and I'm subject to questions right now, sir, if you have any.
Well, thank you again, Commissioner. Appreciate it. Questions from the committee members for Commissioner Ward, Department of Corrections? We've got a question from Senator Robertson.
Commissioner, thank you so much for the information. The facility in Butler, I know a few years ago, I think it was repurposed.
Yes.
And then I think I heard maybe a year or so ago, they were back to closing it down. Is that facility still up and running?
It's closed down, but it's still in our inventory.
Right.
And we entertain any suggestion about reopening it, because Patty Bentley, she had called me about every other month because it's in her district. And that facility, it's on the PDC design. It's 4 pods, open bay. And when we did the budget cuts several years ago, it was one of those smaller facilities we could close and absorb into a bigger facility.
Right, and I remember being at the ribbon cutting when that facility was first brought online, but my memory fades, much like my leader's hair. So, how old is that facility, if you don't mind me asking?
I don't know. Ironically, that was my first assignment as a superintendent.
Oh.
April 1st, 1999, I became superintendent of Western PDC in Butler, Georgia.
Well, there you go. You and I were probably at the same spot and didn't realize we'd see each other again.
Most of those facilities prior were built in the early 80s, like 1982, because you had a major build, I think in 82, 81, and then you had another major prison build in 89 through 91, 92. Yes. So I would think that facility, we can get you that answer, but that facility was built in the early 80s.
Right, and do you recall what the number of beds?
I think I had 240 beds over there, open bay, and they supplied a lot of the labor detail for surrounding counties and things of that nature. We even looked at that possibility of opening it up as a transitional center. Yes, but the availability of jobs in the area and transportation to get the guys back and forth, we kind of took that off the table a little bit.
Pretty desolate area when you start looking at jobs.
Yeah, but it was a chicken plant over in the Vienna area that we were looking at trying to partner with those guys, but it just didn't. The transportation piece, we could never work it out.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I can't believe you didn't remember him. He was the one wearing the orange suit.
Well, you know, in 1999, I was about 31 years old. I was wide out. I was just glad to have a job.
All right, any other questions for the commissioner? Thank you very much. We appreciate you and all your team. Please pass along our thanks, and we're here for you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right. Next up, the GBI. Hey, Vic, how are you? I even have my official GBI mask. I brought it just for you, more today for you.
He's got his gator on today, though.
He does, yeah.
I do.
All right, Director Reynolds, thank you so much for all the wonderful work you and your team does on a day-to-day basis for keeping us safe. And we'll turn it over to you to take us through your portion of the budget, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, and everyone else. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you this morning. Be relatively brief and then certainly available for any questions. Our items begin on page 14 of your material at 206.1. The first item is the providing of funds to fund positions in our legal division. Let me explain that just a little.
It's actually, we start on page 10 on ours.
I apologize.
That's okay.
I'm sorry.
We just have a different version.
I'm so sorry.
Keep going, though. You're good.
And those funds, $270,000, are for the purposes of funding a lawyer, a paralegal, and an admin assistant. Some of you may recall last year the legislature gave us the authority to assist district attorney's offices around the state in prosecution purposes. I will tell you that has really taken off. Our gang liaison attorney has over 100 defendants that she is prosecuting herself, assisting the local DAs around the state. And so that program has really got its footing now. And this is for the purposes of bringing in another lawyer to both assist her and do some internal work that we do day in and day out at the GBI. And so that's the first item at 206.1 is for the funding of those positions. I'll go through all of these, Mr. Chair, and then make myself available. The next item is at 208.1. This is for the increase for the recruitment and retention of medical examiners. Obviously, that's a sizable amount of money. But I do want to tell you that this has worked. Literally, when you all passed the amended budget allowing the increase in salary for the medical examiners within an hour of us posting that on an ad that we had run for a long period of time, trying to get folks interested in becoming a medical examiner in the state of Georgia. Within an hour of posting it, we began getting hits on that and increase in that position. We have a young lady who's coming to join us at the end of summer for one of our medical examiner positions. We have another young lady we're recruiting, trying to think of the right adjective, very strongly out of the state of Texas, and she may very well be interested in the actual Macon position, one of the positions that's really caused us a little bit of difficulty in trying to fill. So I can't begin to tell you as director of this bureau, I've only been there a short period of time, but I will tell you that I don't think there's been any piece of legislation that's affected us as positively as this one has. It literally has helped us tremendously, and it helped us just like that. So I want to tell you how much we appreciate that.
And that's great news. We appreciate the testimony you gave during the amended budget, Director. I think we talked about this briefly, but knowing this is going to be a long-term challenge for us, I know you quoted some statistics of how many people actually had this qualification versus how many positions were open, not just in Georgia, obviously, but nationally. Are we working with Augusta University and other folks to try and begin this pipeline, knowing that for years to come we're going to need these ME positions?
We are. In fact, we have just had not only Augusta, but we've had Emory Medical School folks down at the lab within the last couple of months, touring them around, working with them to develop a partnership. But the one I'm probably most optimistic about is Mercer Medical School. The dean there has just been really extremely helpful in meeting us more than halfway about supplying and helping us get a body at the Macon site. In fact, we're going down 23rd or 24th to host her for a lunch and to spend some time with her face-to-face. She advised us that she is committed to helping us find a person there, and in fact, the plan, the long-range plan, hopefully sooner rather than later, is to work with them to develop a person to be our ME there, and also to be on staff at Mercer Medical School to teach classes as well. So it'll be somebody that's devoted to and committed to that community, as opposed to us just bringing somebody in and requesting that they live in an area they may not be familiar with. We want somebody that's committed to that community, devoted to that area, and she has committed to working with us in that regard. So, yes, and my plan too is also to reach out and develop a partnership with Morehouse Medical School as well. I was telling a friend of mine the other day that if your child has at least been interested in practicing medicine, that we literally have 1,200 to 1,300 medical positions in the United States with about 550 certified doctors to do that. And so we have openings everywhere you go. No matter where you're at in the country, there's an opening for a forensic pathologist. So I went around the block, but yes, we are working with Augusta, we're working with Emory, we're working with Mercer, and I'm committed to working with Morehouse as well.
Very good. Thank you. Please continue.
The next two items, the first one, 209.1, is just a very small item. We actually have one employee that's left in the teacher retirement system, so that's the reason why the $437 is in 209.1. The last item, 209.2, this is an increase in funds for our investigative positions. You may recall that last year, and it may have started in the House if my memory is correct, but we were asked to stagger the employment or the hiring of investigators for the purposes of trying to help the budget in the tune of a little over around $1 million or so, and we did that. And this is just the restoration of the funds for those positions that we staggered hiring. I will tell you that we anticipate starting a new agent class in April. We should be bringing on another 22, 23 agents. We're also in the process of bringing on, I believe, 12 new scientists. 12 new scientists, hopefully by mid-April, late May. Out of those 12, 9 of them will be devoted and committed and trained in DNA testing. And so we'll be picking up that area of testing as well in the lab. So I'm very excited about that. And generally speaking, I'm still very honored, very humbled to be the director. It's a great agency, and Mr. Chair, I've learned in the 2 years, if I stay out of the way, they're mission-driven and they do the job, and I will tell you that we're very proud of the work they've done. So that's basically all I have. If there's anything I can answer for you question-wise, I'll be more than happy to do it.
Thank you, Director. What I've been asking most folks is to, if you have available, it doesn't have to be right now, but follow up, kind of a list of the total amount of staff that you've had, agents, scientists, kind of the high-level positions, over the last 10 to 20 years, just so we can see as the population has increased, as demand has increased, where our manpower has been in that process as well. So again, I didn't mean to put you on the spot with that, but we could do that as a follow-up. That would be helpful.
Absolutely. We will certainly provide that information to you in the next day or so.
Excellent. And I'd like to, sometime in the summer or fall, take this committee as well as the full Public Safety Committee over to headquarters again and spend a couple hours so they can get some more hands-on understanding and knowledge of the great work that you and your team are doing.
We would be honored to host you. I'd also want you to know, too, we're very, very excited about a new program we're just starting, our cold case unit. We're actually going back through every regional office. As I toured every regional office, I was really surprised to learn at the number of cold cases that were pending in each region. And so we've just put together a cold case team of retired agents. I know Senator Robertson will probably knows one or two of those folks, and they've got some skin in the game. A lot of them are cases they actually worked on originally, and so that team is now triaging cold cases from every region. Every region was tasked with picking 4 or 5 cases they believe are solvable, and they're triaging those now. And I really believe that maybe before the year's over, we'll begin solving some cold cases around this state.
That'd be great. Questions, Senator Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Director, thank you. I appreciate the investment and the focus as we stood up the forensics over in Augusta. Us not taking that investment lightly. I know it was difficult to get forensic people to work over there, and it was a little time, but that investment is now beginning to pay off, according to you. And I know that's also making your job a little easier as you use the technology and the knowledge that we have over there to solve some of these cases. I think quickly people around the Southeast are taking note of what we're doing in Georgia. So I appreciate your investment and your focus on that with cybersecurity.
Well, thank you for your support of that. You and I were talking outside. One of the things I'm really positive about seeing it for the cyber unit in Augusta is, initially just because of logistics and physicality, we primarily were working cases in that area of the state, but now I starting to see it spread out through the remainder of the state, and agencies are beginning to realize there is a cyber unit there they can tap into, and they do really good work over there. It's really, if you haven't been, anyone who hasn't been there, it's really worth the trip over if you're ever in that area one day to stop by and just see some of the things they do.
As a follow-up to that again, I know some people listen to cyber and they think we're only talking about technology, right? And they're only talking about computers and hacking. But as you expand that out, not only are we working on that, but looking at the cyber ability to be able to help solve some of these crimes as you're, without getting in their details, but what the capabilities they're doing over there to help track some of these crimes and solve some of them beyond just hackers and computers. It's much more expansive.
It is, and one of the areas we're really starting to concentrate in to assist is some of the technology you can pull from moving vehicles. Vehicles have been involved in hit and runs, vehicle homicides, things of that nature. Those folks over there are really doing deep dives on those as well. So interesting work in Augusta.
Thank you. Question, Senator Harper.
Director,
Yes, sir.
good morning. Good to
Yes,
see you.
sir.
Thank you for what you're doing and your team. Kind of a follow-up to what Chairman Albers asked you. Just can you tell us how many agents you have currently today?
Boots on the ground,
Yep.
it's right around 280
Just around
for
280?
the entire state.
What would you consider full staff if you had a full?
Well, I will tell you that. Wow, that's a great question. I will tell you that I will preface it by saying this. I think after 2 years, there's a lot of work the GBI could be doing that we're not doing now, and it's simply because we don't have the people to do it.
You don't have the manpower. That's right.
This week, I was talking to a sheriff down in Middle Georgia who asked for some help on an issue, and the reality was because it wasn't a violent-based crime, that region didn't have the manpower to assist him. And that's what we are. We're an assisting agency.
That's
We're
correct.
supposed to come in and help. That doesn't mean we need to be helping on a misdemeanor theft, but it does mean that if that sheriff has a conflict or some issue that he shouldn't be in the case, then we're probably the entity that should. I would tell you that in reality, if we had somewhere in the neighborhood of 315, 325 agents, it's probably amazing some of the work, some of the additional work that we could do, and particularly in areas maybe south of Macon, some stuff that we could do that we're just not capable of doing.
That's a good part of the state, by the way.
Yes, sir. And so we could do some really good stuff if we were in the neighborhood of 315 to 325 agents.
Thank you. A question from Senator Robertson.
Real quick, Director, first of all, I want to thank you for bringing Mercer in on this. I have a tremendous amount of respect for what they do down there, and I know myself and the Rules Chair across the hall are very excited with their new medical school going up in Columbus, the campus there. And then my home county, I'm getting a Mercer Clinic out there, and just their reputation, the way they focus on Georgia students and everything, having those individuals here from our state working for a great agency like the GBI excites me. But the other thing you talked about was bringing back these retired agents for these cold cases. I think a lot of times people outside of this building and outside of law enforcement, they think cold case files is a show you watch on television, and they do not understand the impact on families that have lost loved ones years and years gone by, and they have the biggest fear that someone they cared about has been forgotten. And for you to pick up that mantle and to bring that wealth of knowledge in there and show these victims how important their loved ones are to the state of Georgia is admirable and professional, and I absolutely thank you for doing that. It's extremely important, and it's been neglected for too long throughout our state, not by the GBI or anybody, but just by the powers that be that could push the ball forward. So thank you so much for that.
Well,
Means
thank
a
you.
lot.
I saw firsthand in Cobb as a district attorney. We started a cold case unit there, and within 8-9 months, we had solved a 30-year-old double homicide, a rape and homicide of a mother and a 13-year-old daughter. And to have a family member after 30 years come up and literally hug your neck and say, "I appreciate y'all not forgetting about my," I knew right then it was worth every ounce of sweat and time we'd put into it. And I really believe, in my heart, I believe that this group and our agents, before the year is over, will be solving cold cases.
It's wonderful. Other questions? Director, thank you
Mr.
so
Chair.
much. And again,
Appreciate
please
you.
pass along to all of your team how much we appreciate the great work they do in their service.
Thank you. Thank y'all so much. Appreciate it.
Okay, next up, CJCC, please. Good morning, everyone. Jay, great to see you again.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. How are you this morning?
Wonderful, thank you.
Excellent.
All right, please take us through the budget, and we'll, I'm sure, have a question or two before it's over.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. It's an honor to be with you today and share with you our budget requests, and we will follow from the tracking sheet. 210.1 is simply transferring funds from the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council program to the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council of Accountability Court Judges program. This is just an accounting measure, basically. 210.2 simply says that we will continue to manage and administer the accountability court grants, ensuring that the present method of handling these grants continues. 210.3, reduce funds for one-time funding to establish law enforcement training grant for state and local enforcement agencies. The House has reduced our our $15 million grant by $10 million. And obviously, Mr. Chairman, we would like to see that $10 million restored, and appreciate your committee for taking some time, hopefully today, to have some conversations around that. 212.1, increased funds to grants to local domestic violence shelters and sexual assault centers. That is a $700,000 add. That is to replace the cut, to restore the cut from last year when $700,000 was cut from our grant. This just restores that fiscal 21 reduction. 212.2, increased funds to provide a 2% increase to domestic violence shelters. This was a House add of 2% to help offset the VOCA cuts that are coming as a result of the huge reduction in the amount of our VOCA grant that we receive from the federal government. It's a grant that has reduced by double digits each of the last 3 years, and that grant reduction looks like it's going to be even larger in this coming year. 212.3 is to increase funds to fully fund 2 domestic violence shelters. You may remember fiscal year 20, we had 2 domestic violence shelters that were not receiving any of the state grant. All the other shelters were receiving it. These 2 were not. We requested at that time $300,000 so that each of them could begin to receive their share of that state grant. And in fiscal year 2020, $150,000 was added. This is the House adding the remaining $150,000 so that these 2 shelters will also receive the matching grant that the other 46 shelters are receiving. And that is our budget presentation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. 2 areas I want to focus on, things that you and I have been already speaking about, obviously, is both the VOCA funding as well as the granting funding of the $15 million that the House clawed back some of that money. So let's talk about the second one first. Several of us, in fact, Senator Robertson, Kirkpatrick, Chairman Hitchens in the House, and several others went up to Maryland to view a program that we think is going to be very favorable for the state. I know the governor is very passionate about to help teach our law enforcement officers all over the state about de-escalation as well as personal protection for them and the folks that are around them. A very credible program. Correct me if I'm wrong, but these were the funds to do just that. Is that not accurate?
Mr. Chairman, that is correct. That was the intention of these funds. By the way, the fiscal year 21 funds, we did an RFP for de-escalation and use of force training. The primary requests that came in were for use of force training. We actually received over $17 million of requests. We are now in the process of going through those applications. We've not yet awarded those grants the RFP just closed a couple of weeks ago. But the amount that came in fiscal year 21 exceeds the amount of the $15 million. To do what the governor wants to do with this statewide de-escalation so that every law enforcement officer in the state of Georgia receives this training over the course of the next 3 years will require that $15 million each year for the next 3 years to provide that training to each law enforcement officer. So it's a priority of the governor to get this money back in so that we can move forward with this program.
Excellent. And then for the VOCA funding, I know we talked a little bit yesterday that we're not quite sure what's coming out of the latest federal bill.
Correct.
Of what may help or not help. But can you just give us a high-level picture of what that gap is versus where we used to be prior to where we are today?
I would be happy to. We have experienced significant cuts in VOCA over the last several years. We received. Let me see if I can pull this up real quick. My iPad is buffering. We received a high of $99 million in our federal VOCA grant. I believe that was 4 years ago. 3 years ago, that dropped down into the $70 million range. Then it dropped down into the 60s. Last year, it was in the mid-50s. We believe, based on the numbers that we're seeing at this point, we believe that the grant that we're going to receive for this present fiscal year is going to only be about $32 million. Significant cuts that we received over the last 4 years. We were very conservative with the way we have handled these funds over the last number of years. We knew when we got the $99 million that the odds of that being consistent were very slim. So we have historically granted out our VOCA grants for over a 3-year cycle, so that when we award a grant, we know that we can anticipate 2 years of continuing that grant. So by doing that, we're not spending the money the year that we get it. Also, with that $99 million grant, we did a lot of one-time awards. We bought vans. We did things that were one-time expenditures, which did not raise the amount of programming money that was going out to our partners. So we were sending out about $79 million a year in program grants to our partners, and we were able to continue doing that as the grant decreased over the last few years. We were able to continue with those grants that we had committed. With this coming year, we're going to have to cut that probably in the range of $8 to $12 million. Based on what we now see coming out of the federal government. If that continues at $32 million, we're going to have those kind of cuts again each of the next 2 years as well for our sub-grantees. There is a fix that is being looked at in the federal government that will stabilize the fund, but we don't know with that fix where it will stabilize. Will it stabilize at 40? Will it stabilize at 50? We don't know the answer to that. So there's a lot of questions about where we're going to be over the course of the next 3 years with our VOCA funding. But we do know this: where we stand now, we're going to have to make a cut of $8 to $12 million for our subgrantees. Mr. Chairman, that will have a considerable impact on our subgrantees around the state, especially those in the rural parts of the state. In the metro areas where there's corporate sponsorships and corporate partners, our programs have more, they're not as dependent upon those VOCA funds because they have the ability to raise funds. In the rural areas, they're more dependent upon the grant funds that they receive from us. And fundraising is more difficult during COVID than it was. We have subgrantees that do 1 or 2 major fundraising events a year, and those events were not able to be held last year as a result of COVID. So they're being hit doubly hard by the cuts in our grants and the inability to raise funds in the way they have previously. We believe, based on our projections, that our subgrantees may have to cut as many as 265 jobs in order to absorb these reductions. And these jobs are individuals who are on the front line providing victim services to our victims around the state. So there's going to be some impact through those VOCA cuts.
Okay. Well, let's follow up on seeing what happens with I guess the current bill is going to pass sometime today, is my understanding, in Washington. Let's figure out what that is, and then we can follow up on this in further detail.
Okay.
Questions from the committee? Senator Harper?
In that federal bill, do we know, I guess we're kind of still, we really don't know what they're going to put in the federal bill, even if it passes today.
I'm not sure they know what's in their federal bill yet.
Most of them don't. Okay. Out of curiosity, the programs that the shelters provide, are they, so we get federal money, they get state money, so they get both. Are there federal requirements and state requirements, or are they just abiding under state mandates? Are they abiding by federal mandates? Are there mandates that they have to do? Are there services they have to provide? Are those mandated by the state government? Are they mandated by the federal government? Do you get where I'm going?
They're certified. There are expectations. A domestic violence shelter, for example, has to be accessible 24/7. There are expectations for, and this, by the way, while domestic violence shelters were addressed by the House committee, These VOCA cuts impact far more than just domestic violence shelters. They impact our sexual assault centers. We're the primary funders for sexual assault centers, child advocacy centers, court-appointed special advocates, the victim advocates program within the district attorney's offices. All of those programs rely heavily on the grant funds that come. And there are state requirements and there are federal requirements. The state requirements specifically around those services that they have to provide are pretty difficult to provide when you don't have the manpower locally to be able to meet those requirements. And there may be some of the rural programs. If you take a program, a big metro program that has 40 or 50 or 60 employees, and they lose an employee or 2 or 3, that'll have an impact. But if you take a rural program that may only have 4 employees and they lose 1 of the 4, that's a significant impact for those rural programs. So there's going to be impact. There's also federal requirements around how those funds can be spent. They have some needs that are going to continue to be the same level they've always been. They can't do anything about some of those hard costs that they have, and they're not eligible for federal funding. They've got to use state funding for that. So it gets really difficult to try to take those funds and maneuver them around to spend them in eligible ways and meet the demands on the ground.
Okay, one last question for Senator Robertson, then we're going to have to unfortunately put our foot on the gas pedal.
Just really
Yes.
quick, can you provide us, this committee, with those requirements for each one of those?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can get those to you.
Yeah, because I've been lobbied real hard here lately by the Sex Crisis Center in Muskogee, and because these cuts are hurting.
Yep.
And so if you could provide those, I would greatly appreciate it.
We absolutely can get those. We'll get them to the. We'll just get them to the committee, and you can disseminate them. Okay.
That'd be perfect. Yeah, just email them over. We'll take care of it.
Yep, we'll be happy to do that.
Commissioner, thank you so much for all the great work you and your team are doing. We'll have some good follow-ups, and I'm sure we'll have an adjustment or two you'll be happy with.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you, Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you.
Committee, thank you.
Okay, next up, DJJ. There he is.
How are
Commissioner, how
y'all?
are you?
Good.
Good to see you as always.
Absolutely. Same here.
All right, I don't mean to rush you, but
I heard what you said. I got the
don't
foot on the
delay.
gas. I'm about to
thank you, sir.
get
Go
through
ahead.
this as quickly as I
And
can.
thank you for all the great work you and your team are doing. We appreciate it.
And thank you.
All right, go ahead.
All right, on tracking sheet, we're going to start with 213.1 is a community service. It's increased funds to reflect the adjustment in the teachers' retirement system for 19.06% to 19.81%. 215.1 secure commitments are YDCs. The teachers, same thing. Teacher adjustment for the retirement system, 19.06 to 19.81. 215.2 increase in teacher training for experience. Historically, we didn't have teachers that weren't getting paid based off their training experience. This will help alleviate that. 215.3 is a secure commitment utilizing existing funds to implement a 10% increase for our JCOs, which is a very big shot in the arm, as Commissioner Ward stated earlier, for our JCO series.
And similar to Commissioner Ward, I would love to have a follow-up, maybe sometime end of summer, early fall, even just by email for the committee, of how that's impacting your attrition.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir. 216.1, again, it's the teacher retirement system. 216.2 in all YDCs, teacher training increases, and 216.3 is again for our RYDCs for the 10% increase for our JCO series. And quickly, I go over the bond package that we have proposed. It's $32 million coming out of the House version, and it was to construct a 56-bed housing unit at Muskogee YDC to get rid of those old wood cottage frame style dormitories. And Augusta YDC again is to redo the design for the academic buildings in very bad shape there. And then also at Augusta YDC to construct a 56-bed housing unit for that facility that was built, I think, in 1964. So it'll upgrade that. And then and improvements for our Loftus facility due to DBHDD closure. We have a facility down there in Thomasville that we need to have, bring the utilities and improvements up online. And then our statewide contraband detection system we're going to implement in about 9 facilities. This is 1.1 million, and that's kind of alleviate some of the strip searches that we have and hopefully eliminate some of the contraband we have coming into the facilities. And with that, that's all. I know I went through it pretty
That's
quick.
good
but
stuff. Questions from the committee members? Senator Harper.
Commissioner, thank you, number one, for the work that you're doing, and two, for the work you're doing to give your folks a much-needed pay raise. I think I can speak for everybody up here. You have our support on that. Whatever we can do to help you through that, we're willing to do that. My question is, there's a proposal right now in the legislature dealing with the age of an adult. You may not know the number, and I haven't done any research myself to figure this out, but if we do that, there will be a number of 17-year-olds that would now come under your custody.
correct.
My question is one, do you know how many that is? And two, do you have the facilities and the space to take on that additional number of possible new residents? I think you get what my question and the premise of my question. So I just open it up.
Yes, sir. So we have pulled some numbers, and thanks to the staff over at CJCC and GBI for helping us pull some of these numbers together as it relates to that. So as of 2020, which of course was a skewed year because of the pandemic, there were approximately 8,400 17-year-olds that were arrested in the state of Georgia, and out of that, 5,186 were felony arrests. And so, and the majority of that coming from, it was 822 in Gwinnett, 789 in Cobb, 669 in Clayton, 615 or 618 in DeKalb. And so when you look at that and you look at our facilities around the state, around the metro Atlanta area, we don't have the bed capacity in that area to handle that potential influx. So when you look at those felony cases, I went a step further and kind of broke it down into what we call the 7 deadly sins, and it was about 284 of those out of those felony cases were they were charged with 7 deadly sins. So we know that population is definitely coming to us. And then you can say, it's safe to say that our population would double easily inside secure commitment and in the community with the influx of racy age.
And just to follow up on Senator Harper's question, how much capacity do you have right now?
That's what I was going to ask that.
I've got that here. Total capacity we have.
Available capacity.
Well, total and then available.
Right.
Operational capacity we have, and again, when I say operational capacity, we have a lot of bed space. Like say at Eastman, it's a 256 bed facility, but under best practices, you wouldn't put 256 kids under one roof. Same as Metro, as a 200 bed facility, you wouldn't put that. So our current capacity that we have right now in an operational standpoint, what we would like to operate at, is 105 beds. That's going to be in our RYDC. Available as of today, and then 462 beds in our RYDC, our detention centers, which most of them are coming from we stretched that across 25 facilities. So,
For simple math tells me out of 5,000, that'd be about 1/10 the capacity.
yes.
Okay.
So you have 550
Really
beds.
quick, Commissioner, y'all use a classification system on these juveniles, is that correct? When they come into the system, you look at criminal histories, you look at current charges, past charges, any other external impacts that require them to be classified into certain facilities where the resources are there to deal with those types of issues. So when juveniles come in, you just can't put them, if you have 50 beds, the next 50 that come in don't necessarily go into that facility with those 50 available beds. Because if we start getting cross-classification in there, then we create environments that are extremely dangerous.
Yes, sir. And really in our RYDC, it's in the catchment area, so we get whatever the local jurisdictions are coming. But in our long-term facilities, they're classified based on their treatment needs.
And gang violence does not fall under the 7 deadly.
No, sir.
That's correct. So in that in that population outside of the 7 deadly, we could very well have seasoned gang members and others, 17-year-olds, being poured into some of these facilities with younger
Absolutely.
offenders. Is that correct?
Yeah, you can have a 17-year-old in there with, with a 14-year-old, 15-year-old, 13-year-old, depending on the case at any one of our facilities.
And your turnover rate within your agency right now is?
Agency-wide is 45%, but in the JCO series is 97%.
Say that last.
JCO series, our correctional officer series, is 97% turnover.
97% of turnover rate in correctional officers. And then if we inject a dangerous further make a dangerous environment more dangerous, then that 3% that you're being able to retain right now certainly, I think, would dissipate.
Yeah, and I think, here, and I know I'm kind of going off topic a little bit, but here recently, we've seen a little spike of an increase in some of that as well, as far as youth on staff assaults unprovoked. And so a lot of times when we do our exit interviews and things of that nature, our surveys, the staff are saying, the stressful environment, difficult population that they got to deal with, along with the pay. But hopefully this, will help alleviate some of that with the pay adjustments that we're about to implement. So, yeah, it's definitely a concern of ours that we're taking a look at very closely.
Thank you, sir.
All right, well, I'm sure have some follow-up questions once we are through a budget. So thank you so much,
you.
Commissioner. Appreciate all the great work your team does. And we're going to bring in Department of Public Safety, Colonel Wright, if you are out there. Good morning, Colonel. How are you, sir?
Good morning. How are y'all today?
Good. Great to have you here. I'll begin by thanking you, your entire team, and everyone across the state, and especially even in our Capitol and Capitol grounds who are keeping everyone safe. Thank you.
Thank y'all.
All right. Why don't you go ahead and just take us through the high points, and we're not trying to rush you, but we don't have a lot of time.
Okay. Well, good morning. It's an honor for us to be here this morning with y'all. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you and the members of the committee. We'd also like to thank you for reinstating our $2.5 million in the amended fiscal year budget for 2021, so thank y'all for that. Mr. Chairman, we support the governor's recommendation for a bond package in the amount of $775,000 to purchase the FLIR system for one of our helicopters and to provide an upgrade for our downlink system. Once this is completed, all of our 407 aircraft will be equipped with our FLIR capabilities. We also support the governor's recommendation for a bond package for the construction of a new headquarters building at a cost of $56,410,000. Stevens and Wilkinson Architecture was selected as the architect firm. Turner Construction has been selected as the construction firm. The plans are complete, and we are currently in the design development phase and are preparing the construction documents at this time. DPS supports the governor's recommendation for a bond package of $655,000 for the acquisition of one mobile tower and the construction of 2 stationary towers. The mobile tower will provide us the opportunity to set up temporary communications when we lose a tower or communications in a particular area. Mr. Chairman, we'd like to direct your attention to the budget tracking sheet line 39.1.1. The Department of Public Safety supports the House's recommendation of funds to create 2 new job classes to retain experienced sworn personnel. These are the senior and master trooper officer positions we once had within the agency. You will see the same line for Capitol Police, Field Offices, and Motor Carrier Compliance Division. The total of these funds are $435,634. The implementation of the Senior Master Trooper Program will allow sworn members to achieve an increase of 12 years and an additional increase at 20 years of service. We currently have 101 senior and 52 master troopers and officers. The Senior and Master Program is based on tenure. Currently, members who don't promote within the competitive promotion process are unable to achieve an increase beyond 7.5 years of service. This would provide a non-competitive promotional pay increase for those members.
And I don't want to interrupt your
Yes, sir.
flow, but Colonel, thank you for the discussions we've had on this. I think this is critically important as we're seeing local agencies who are getting regular increases typically on an annual basis. And I appreciate the great work the House did, but it will be the intention of this Senate to make that 5% for each one of those classifications.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. These seasoned officers are extremely vital in helping develop the inexperienced officers. 56% of our troopers and officers have 9 or less years of service currently. 24% have 10 to 19 years of service, and only 17% of our agency has 20 years of service or more. Moving to line 39.4.1, the Department of Public Safety supports the governor's recommendation of almost $3.2 million to assist with trooper school funding. In fiscal year 2022, we're scheduled to have 3 trooper school graduations. The 110, which started in January of 2021, will graduate in September. We're currently recruiting for the 111th Trooper School. This school is tentatively set to begin in August of 2021 and will graduate in April of 2022. The 112th Trooper School is tentatively set to start in January 2022 and will graduate in April of 2022. Our plan is to start both classes with at least 100 cadets in hopes of graduating 75 in each of those classes. The 112 school will be our first accelerated trooper school. It will be specifically for applicants who are already post-certified with at least 2 years of law enforcement experience. They will graduate in 13 weeks compared to the traditional trooper school model of 32 weeks. We're simply removing that basic mandate portion of the school that they've already completed. This will save us money on lodging, meals, and salaries. We believe the accelerated school consisting of cadets with prior law enforcement experience will increase our trooper school graduation rate. The DPS board unanimously approved the implementation of the accelerated trooper school model. This model will not take the place of our traditional trooper school model. This is just simply an additional alternative to our schools. In addition to the accelerated trooper school, we've recently adjusted our uniform and appearance policy, which allows candidates to join our team that have tattoos that can be covered with our Class A uniform, and that is this uniform, which is our brand. It's our sharpest looking uniform. We hope to encourage more applicants with prior military service. These men and women are people with real life experience, something that we desperately need within our agency. These are just 2 examples of how we are continuously evaluating and altering our methods to increase our recruiting levels. As you know, recruiting is an ongoing issue for our agency. In 2010, we had an average of 802 troopers on the road. At the close of 2020, we had an average of 800 on the road. We are simply not making any gains in our staffing numbers. Our staffing level is currently at 767 troopers and 236 motor carrier officers. With Georgia now the 8th most populous state in the country at 10.6 million citizens, the ratio of residents to troopers is approximately 14,000 to 1. It's becoming exceptionally hard to find people willing to do this job, particularly with the level of scrutiny and the danger that officers face each day. Trooper school is very challenging. Our experience has shown that many cadets fail during their first attempt at trooper school but succeed in their second or subsequent attempts. We've retained 22 of the cadets that were currently in the 110 but have expressed a continued desire to become a trooper. We utilize these cadets in other areas of the agency and other needs. Doing so allows us to retain them for the 111th school. This saves us money during the recruiting and the rehire process while filling vacant job needs inside the agency. It also helps us better acclimate those employees to our agency. Because recruiting and retention remains a significant priority, we look forward to working with this committee and OPB on initiatives that help us retain current members and recruit future employees. Mr. Chairman, we'd also ask you to look at line 39.4.3, and we'd ask you to reconsider that line. Due to the budget cuts we incurred last fiscal year, that $1 million would take additional funds away from our operational budget. We simply would ask that y'all strike that language. We have prior year bond funds that can be used for the post repairs and maintenance that we've not had to utilize this year. Mr. Chairman, I respectfully request the committee's favorable consideration for the governor's fiscal year 2022 budget recommendations for Trooper School and the House recommendations for the 2 new job classes to be reinstated. And I'll take any questions that you might have.
Yeah, thank you, Colonel. And in addition, thank you for the time that you and Lieutenant Colonel Hitchens has spent with me. And one of the things that we have talked about, and specifically I want to point out the great leadership by Senator Harper and Robertson, is having educational incentive pay that you have talked about for some time. And one of the things that we're going to be putting in the budget is, as people achieve degrees in associates, bachelor's, master's, and so on, that by the desire of the Board of Public Safety to make sure they believe those degrees will help them in their jobs, right? If someone got a bachelor's degree in Scandinavian art history, it probably won't be appropriate to help in the Department of Public Safety. However, there are an awful lot of degrees that would be of direct benefit to that. So that's something that we think is great. Appreciate your leadership, both of you, on that, and we're going to work to put that into motion as well.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Questions to the committee members?
I have
Senator Harper.
Mr. Chairman. First off, Commissioner Colonel, thank you for what you and your team do, and I agree with the chairman related to the education incentive pay, and also appreciate his work on the Master Trooper, Senior Trooper pay levels as well. I think that's a great program that you have had and that we need to reinstate. In regards to Trooper School, if I'm correct, it costs closer to the 3.2 to run Trooper Schools than it does the 1.5, I believe, that's in the budget. So I'm assuming that your agency would have to make up some additional funds to run that Trooper School if we're not able to make some adjustments in that particular line item. Would that be a correct statement? Am I?
Yes, sir. So with the models that we're currently using, with the 100-man, start with a 100-man school and try to graduate 75, and we feel like we're going to be much more successful with that 112 school. And it costs about $6.6 million to graduate 75. If we graduate 75, that's a $6.6 million physical impact. So yes, we would have to make up some money.
Okay. And two, I just want to commend you and your team in coming up with some creative ways to bring on new troopers. I know that y'all are always looking at ways that you can address the issue that you have, like we were discussing with Director Reynolds and your manpower and the field operations that you have. So I know y'all have made some new changes over the last couple of weeks and months, and this new school that they're bringing online, I think that's a great opportunity for those that have law enforcement experience to come on board and be a state trooper. So I want to commend you for that, and I want to just public it to the chairman. I'd like to work with you on making sure that we're addressing that issue, and they're not having to use general fund money to pay for those type of things. So thank you, Commissioner.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator.
Okay. Any other questions? Colonel, thank you so much. Really appreciate all the great work you and your team do, and we'll have some good follow-up conversations. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All
Y'all
right.
have a great day.
All right, next, post. Director Ayers, great to see you as always. As I mentioned to everybody else, and we haven't followed it yet, as succinct as you possibly can, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, committee members, as you know, the purpose of the Peace Officer Standards and Training Council, or POST, is to serve the state's regulatory body overseeing the training and conduct and certification requirements of Georgia's approximate 59,000 state and local law enforcement officers, correctional officers, juvenile correctional officers, community supervision, and communications officers. In these unprecedented times that we're in, police reform and accountability are at the forefront of our public concern. The role of post and post counsel are more critical today, perhaps more so than ever before. The public demands that our law enforcement profession be held to the highest standard, that the training of our officers be current and state-of-the-art, and that our officers be held accountable for their actions through fair, appropriate, and effective oversight. In the upcoming legislative session that we're in now, our law enforcement officers makers will be focused on addressing issues of what people like to refer to as police reform. I prefer to call it police evolution. The legislature will be focused on addressing these concerns within our state, just as nationally these issues will be examined by federal agencies. While in previous years post may have been seen as less of a priority, today in our current state and national law enforcement crisis, post and its viability and relevance to me are of extreme importance. So thank you for allowing me the opportunity to address our goals and needs for the future of Georgia law enforcement. It's our continued pledge to address the development of our profession as we seek to also ensure the safety of our citizens and officers. As we prepare to enter this budget process, I respectfully make the following request. These requests are based entirely on actual needs and aren't intended to be viewed as niceties or wants. Post is currently allowed 30 total positions that are divided between 3 divisions and command staff. The current staffing allotment is inadequate to fulfill the responsibilities of this agency. The post FY 2021 budget is $3,870,669. From that total figure, $908,231 is awarded to both the Georgia Sheriff's Association and the Georgia Chiefs Association. Post receives no financial benefit from these funds. With the reduction of the $908,231, Post has an actual operating budget of $2,962,438. Our actual budget leaves us in a situation where 88% of that budget goes to personal services, which is $2,606,945.44 if we're totally staffed. This leaves us with a total operating cost of $355,492.56. From this figure, all other expenses must be paid. These include rent, vehicle expenses, travel, training, hotel expenses for council members, printing, postage, which, believe it or not, for post is a extreme figure, and equipment requirements. All programs and costs associated with hearings must be paid for from this as well. While we charge fees and fines for these programs, 100% of that money collected is surrendered to the general fund. We cannot currently use any of it to offset the ongoing cost of these programs. The average money that we collect annually in these fines and fees is approximately $785,000. The current state law requires Post to cover all costs associated with Osa Hearings. With that being said, Post receives no other source of funding, either from state or federal sources, and we're responsible for the oversight of 29 training academies operating within our state. These academies operated through the Georgia Public Safety Training Center, technical schools, colleges, state agencies, and local large law enforcement agencies. In our oversight role, Post investigates serious training injuries and deaths, training violations, and issues of academic dishonesty, as well as other rule violations committed by students or staff. Post is charged with the responsibility of conducting annual training audits of each academy to ensure that these academies are operating within compliance of Post rules and uniform training regulations. Post rules require that each academy be audited annually, once a year, to verify compliance with these guidelines and rules. We have to do this currently with one auditor. That simply cannot be done. Unfortunately, with this level of staffing and as such, it's been the practice of Post to allow individual academies to conduct what we refer to as self-assessments and send that to Post to review. These assessments are often provided to Post for documentation of completion. The recent Georgia State Patrol Academy incident sheds serious light onto this process. An in-depth review of the Academy operations at that time revealed that previously unreported issues with the management of the training academy that should have been identified through proper inspection were overlooked. This issue alone has cost the state greatly in revenue and expended man-hours to address, and has been the topic of many discussions between all of us on the committee. It's imperative that this issue not be allowed to recur in the future at any of our academies. As such, we're requesting additional funding to hire and equip 3 additional auditors. This will be an overall cost of $364,194, with an additional ongoing operational cost of $15,000. This figure will cover the total cost of salaries, benefits, as well as equipment and vehicle expenses, and a detailed cost analysis is attached to the documents that I provided you before the hearing.
Please.
Post is currently authorized a total of 10 investigators. One position is currently held by a supervisor, and another is being held open due to our current budget restrictions. We're requesting that that vacant position be filled. On average, Post investigates 1,302 cases annually. This number was obtained by averaging the total number of cases worked by Post investigators during the previous 5 years. Also, on average, each investigator is assigned an extremely large geographical area consisting of approximately 114 agencies per investigator. Also, on average, the cases investigated by Post range from the relatively simple to the much more complex. For example, in the GSP investigation, 4 investigators spent more than 1,000 man-hours investigating the operations of the Georgia State Patrol Training Academy and the circumstances surrounding those cheating allegations. Due to a large number of officer misconduct cases and our current investigative staff, we're unable to adequately investigate many of these cases. Investigators find themselves reviewing investigative reports provided by the host agency and summarizing those details for the council to consider. Unfortunately, these cases assigned to our investigators are often poorly worked by the host agency and partially completed investigations, which sometimes leads the councils to impose inappropriate sanctions on officers. These sanctions are then appealed by the affected officer, which leads to a costly appeals process for which Post has no established funding source. Society and our officers deserve better and demand that we quickly, thoroughly, and accurately investigate and document these cases when they are brought to our attention. We are currently failing in this area. Investigations currently take too long to complete. This issue exposes the officer in question to an incredibly large amount of stress and creates additional issues for their departments in terms of unfulfilled staffing. In an attempt to improve this area, Post is requesting to hire 2 additional investigators at a total cost of $242,796. Also, I provided a detailed cost assessment of that. Originally, Post held positions for curriculum specialist. This job is designed to review course conduct for accuracy and relevant conduct. Under OCGA 35-8-7, powers and duties of the council generally, subsection 15 states to establish and modify the curriculum, including the methods of instruction, composing the basic training courses, and to set the minimum number of hours thereafter. Subsection 16, to establish and recommend curricula for such advanced in-service and specialized training courses as the council shall deem advisable, and to recognize the completion of such courses by the issuance of certificates. 19, to research, plan, and establish policy relative to peace officer training and to develop and coordinate the delivery of peace officer training programs through such agencies and institutions as the council may deem appropriately. And finally, 20, to establish as part of the curriculum for basic and in-service training courses for all peace officers training on organized criminal activity and street gangs. While curriculum specialists were taken from Post and reassigned to GIPSTIC in 1996, those curriculum specialists assigned to the Georgia Public Safety Training Center are responsible for generating and reviewing training courses currently offered by GIPSTIC. And that's a very important process, and they need those positions. The problem is, while that's an important function, there is currently no one reviewing courses offered by other academies, other agencies, throughout the state or companies that sell training to law enforcement agencies throughout the state, or to overlook individual officers who choose to create their own training class. There's just simply no oversight there. Under the current system, a certified instructor may generate classes to be taught throughout the state without post oversight. To approve the course as such, there's no method to review the quality or to judge the veracity of the information that they're putting out there. This could expose the trainer, a company, or a police agency to civil liability. Post is responsible for approving these courses and awarding training hours without the benefit of actually reviewing the course conduct. This practice is just ripe with potential to expose the officer to inadequate training or inaccurate information. Post requests approval and funding to hire 4 curriculum specialists to address this need at a projected cost of $354,704. The Post computer systems operate currently under Windows 7 program, which is no longer supported. The state's cybersecurity awareness team has encouraged all state agencies to purchase Windows 10 software. We currently can't load that onto our system, so we would have to buy new computers. And as such, we're requesting to purchase 20 computers with Windows 10 software at a cost of $18,000. Additionally, our IT department, which consists of 1 individual, needs the help of a security technician. We've looked into that. This position would help the IT manager and programmer to keep our system safe and up to date in technology. As you know, there's a lot of information that's maintained on the Post data gateway. And our client base grows, so do our needs for technical security. Staffing this position will create a cost of $67,000. Additionally, I'd like to bring to the attention of the committee that Post facilities are currently located in Austell, Georgia, at what is commonly referred to as the Thread Mill Complex. It's an old factory that's been renovated. It's a very nice facility. Post has been there for many years. The primary function, as you guys know, of Post is the sanctioning of officers. It's a primary function, many of which become agitated at the loss of their ability to continue in their law enforcement profession. These officers are highly trained in the use of firearms, and additionally, Post is often sometimes selected by individuals who bear ill will toward law enforcement officers. It's a concern that the Post facility has no security, and the Post facility within the Thread Mill has no reinforced entry points. The door leading into our office is a hollow core residential door. So I've sent you all photographs of the complex and what it looks like. We've requested some evaluations to be made to determine what would be the best way to enhance the security of the building. And I've attached to you an estimated cost sheet indicating that we can make significant improvements to hardening our entry points in the glass in that building at an estimated cost of $75,682. The final 2 things I'd like to discuss with you is the issue of Osa Hearings. As I mentioned earlier, currently there's no funding for that. When I first arrived at Post, there was a considerable attempt made to minimize the use of Osa Hearings by capitulating to sanctioned officers' demands and their counsel's demands for reduced sanctions imposed by Post. I cannot argue against that strongly enough. The council has a reason to be there, and if they feel it is necessary to revoke an officer's certification, then we need to, if at all possible, support what council says. The appeals process allows an officer to take that course or take their case to an OSA or an Office of Hearing, and Post is required to pick up all cost of that. And no matter whether we win or lose, we absorb that cost. This year, we're projecting that that's going to cost us somewhere around $25,000 to continue in that practice. Can't tell you enough, it's the best money that we can spend to continue to do that. But as I said before, there is no funding for that in my budget at all. And finally, the last thing I wanted to bring to your attention is H.R. 218. which deals with the issuance of retired firearms carry credentials and cards to law enforcement officers who have more than 10 years credible service in law enforcement within the state of Georgia. Currently, we charge a $25 fee for that. 100% of that fee money goes to the general coffer and is not used to offset the cost of the program. The program is costing us somewhere between $30,000 to $50,000 a year to do that, and I would ask that you guys would consider including that money in our budget as well. And with that, sir, that's all I have, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Well, thank you. You always make a exceptionally thorough presentation, but I want to take a moment to thank you for your leadership. You are trying to really evolve your agency and your area and take it to the next level, which we need it to be, and it's critically important. So I want to thank you personally. Everyone on the committee got a paper version. I think also we forwarded out the electronic version as well of the recommendations, which you have a great amount of support for, and we'll be sending around some of our thoughts on that with the committee over the next day or so. But there are any specific questions for Director Ayers?
Just really quick. Director, who owns the Thread Mill property?
The city of Austell
Thank
owns that property, yes, sir.
All right. Seeing no more questions, thank you so much, and we will be following up soon. Appreciate all that you and your team are doing.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Have a nice day, sir.
Thank you. Firefighter Standards and Training. Director, Chief.
Excuse me, I forgot my mask.
Okay. Somebody else did too.
We'll have a sale on them when we're over here. Gordon, great to see you. Thank you so much for the great work you're doing. We are just a way bit behind now, so if you could just take us through quickly, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll catch you up.
All right.
Well, the only thing we're asking for is and it's on 39.7.1, the $150,000 for testing that the House put in. We'd like to maintain that. We'd also like to ask if that can be put in to the budget as a line item, then maybe that way we won't have to come back every year and ask for it. But that's and it's for the same reasons that we did in the 2021 adjusted budget. I appreciate y'all putting the monies in for that to finish up this year with, and I hope to see fit to leave this in. I would like to say that yesterday we just finished, the council gave the final approval to the votes on the fireworks tax grants, and we were able to grant 41 grants. So that is a very good program and really helps the fire service, especially the ones that really need it.
Thank you for that. And I want to thank Senator Harper and Mullis. Were greatly involved in that. I enjoyed working with them on it. Would love to, whenever you have a chance, you can email over to me those grants, because I want to share them with the rest of the committee. I know that they will be excited to see that. I bet he can. And we don't need to talk about it again, but I'm very excited about the work you're doing for the upgrading of the certifications and training, the virtual work, et cetera. That's something I'd love to follow up with you again with this committee, perhaps in the fall, just to see how things are moving along.
Okay.
So, great.
All right.
Any questions?
Good. Questions?
Thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Thank
Well
y'all.
done. All right, and last
get
but
the-
certainly not least,
All right. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Gypstick. Director Wigington, are you out there? There he is. All right.
Hello.
Promise next year we'll put you up first after waiting this long.
Oh, that's fine, sir. Sometimes being last is better. You get all the leftovers.
Well,
Is
that's
that
true.
true?
Yeah, there's 3 or 4 extra masks down there if you want to borrow them.
Hopefully, there's a little bit of leftovers.
All right, let's take us through. Appreciate again all the great work you all are doing, and I know we talked about this before, but we're overdue. Chairman Harper back a few years ago brought the Public Safety Committee out there, and I intend to follow his lead and do the same with both the budget as well as the full committee. But we'll do that when the weather's a little bit warmer and the pollen's gone. So
Yes,
go
sir.
ahead.
You know, you've got an open invitation anytime you're ready.
Thank you.
So during these challenging times, we've been able to maintain the training throughout the state for all public safety professionals with our robust online system. So where some of the in-person training slowed down for a few months, we were able to make sure everybody kept their certifications, whether it was in law enforcement or the firefighting aspect. We are back up to full operational standards now. With that, we have 192 employees. 176 of those are full-time, 16 part-time, and we have 12 vacancies. If you'll notice, we did not have any requests, but there's been a couple of things come up during this session that I will address now. One, there was going to be legislation addressing the school resource officer program in the state. So currently, there is a school resource officer program that we teach, but it is not a mandated program or certification. So legislatively, it was going to be addressed. I think the senator found out that he could handle that through a post rule or statute, making it a certification and a mandatory training. With that, that will create a burden on us that we're not funded for. So currently, we have one instructor assigned to that program, and that instructor, that's a third of her responsibility. So she only teaches about 200 SROs annually, and there's about 2,300 throughout the state. So if that becomes a mandated program that they have to receive training within 12 months, that would put a burden on us that we could not meet without additional staffing and operational cost. We have looked at those numbers, and that total request would be, and I think I've sent you a white paper, Senator, Mr. Chairman, is $191,525 is what that request would be to fill those positions to meet this demand if passed by post. The second issue is, if you'll recall, a few years ago, Governor Deal done a great thing for the law enforcement community in the state. With us at the center, we not only service law enforcement and have a police department on site, we have a fully functioning fire department that our ladies and gentlemen there in the Fire Academy leave the academy and provide a service to the local community for the city of Forsyth, Monroe County, and other counties that surround us. With that increase that the governor proposed for law enforcement, he was very specific on having a gun and a badge and wearing a vest. So at that time, our law enforcement instructors, so for us, they're instructors across the board. They can teach in different capacities, but those instructors on the law enforcement side got the 20% adjustment. The ones in our fire academy did not. So what that done is created a substantial headache for me, number one, but it's created an issue that I have supervisors in the fire academy look at an entry-level job advertisement on the police academy for the same type instructor job, and it's about $9,000 difference in pay. So with that, we've had a lot of questions that's come up after session started about this issue. That proposal to fix this problem in the fire academy, we would ask for $199,501, and that would fix the pay disparity within the fire academy and police academy. And again, for us, they're instructors across the board, whether they work in the fire academy or the police academy. And two, we have one TRS made an adjustment this year with their employees, so we've had one employee on staff that is a TRS employee, and that adjustment we have not been included in yet. It's only $247.50, but I felt like I would have addressed that.
I think we can handle that one.
Yes, sir. And then there's one other issue that I'd like to bring to the committee's attention. Senator Albers, you're very familiar with the volunteer firefighter program throughout the state. Over 50% of the firefighters in Georgia are volunteers. And up until 3 years ago, volunteer firefighters, if they received training, most of that training was done either after hours or on their vacation time from their full-time job. And I'm not sure how most spouses would feel if you took your 40-hour vacations and said, honey, I'm going to go to Gypstick and get my training so I can maintain my volunteer firefighter certification.
Mrs. Albers wasn't pleased. Keep going.
I know there's a lot in the state that was not pleased. So we asked for a couple of positions 3 years ago to fulfill that void. And we put these instructors on the road so they would actually go and teach the volunteer firefighters in their communities on weekends and after hours. So we've tried to do a good deed by making sure these volunteers had adequate training. When the budget cuts came up a couple of years ago, we had a position that was vacated in that volunteer firefighter program. So we were in between hiring. So instead of affecting a person that was currently on staff, we give up one of those positions. So now we have one person that's assigned to that entire program to train the volunteer firefighters in the state of Georgia. So we would like to, if it's possible, get that position back and add an additional position, if possible, to meet that demand. That is an area that just the state has not done a very good job in addressing and making sure these volunteer firefighters are properly trained. That way local communities are equipped with the proper response. And that request would be to add the one full-time position back and then add an additional position would be $258,322. And with that, I will conclude my presentation. Open it up to any questions, Mr. Chairman, if you have any.
Well, first, certainly thank you again for the great work you're doing. It's important work, and we know what happens when we don't do it effectively, right? That the costs can be extraordinary. So it's, what's the old ounce of prevention quote we use sometimes? So what I'd love to do is, I know that Andrew has got the information for the additional positions to train our volunteer firefighters. I think it'd be a good idea to have, we'll follow up with our Firefighter and Fire Chiefs Association as well, for them to put together some materials and letters that we can share with our fellow senators and House members in order for them to understand what that really means and how that really helps their local communities. And maybe further, we'll even get ACCG and GMA also to weigh in again to show how important that really is, because what you and I know, and not everyone knows, that impacts ISO certifications,
Yes,
which
sir.
is going to impact everybody's cost to their bottom line, to businesses and to residences and all those good stuff like that. And I appreciate the great work you're doing. Any questions from committee members? Wow, you did great. Well, thank you all very much, and we will be following up very soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All
Y'all
right.
have a great.
That is the final agenda item. We are going to follow up. Andrew has done a great job. I want to commend Mr. Andrew Zoll for his excellent work, and the Budget Office. We're going to put together our recommendations, and I will send it around the committee members so we can huddle before Friday morning. Thank you so much. This meeting is hereby adjourned.